Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Weckerly, and welcome to the Ready Living podcast, where each episode is designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to create the life you want. Thanks for joining us, and remember to subscribe for free on your favorite platform. My guest today is Dr. Cliff Redford, also known as the Worldwide Vet. He's spent over 25 years helping companion dogs and cats at his Wellington Veterinary Hospital in Ontario, Canada, and volunteers once a week at Canada's busiest wildlife rehabilitation facility, treating injured and orphaned wild animals. He shares stories and experiences about his work on the podcast Vet Life with Dr. Cliff and YouTube channel Dr. Cliff Worldwide Vet. He's also built a reputation for international wildlife medicine and surgery, having performed life-saving operations in Ukraine while missiles rattled the operating room, in Greece in the aftermath of a devastating wildfire, and saving a giant fruit bat tangled above 7 lanes of traffic in India. He's the executive producer, co-creator, and on-screen host of the award-winning feature-length documentary Dr. Cliff Worldwide Vet that features him and his daughter Emily on a 2022 volunteer trip to India during Diwali. The film has earned international recognition, including awards for Best Documentary, Best Editing, Best Director, and Best TV Pilot. Welcome, Cliff.
Thank you very, very much.
So let's start with your documentary, which I had the chance to watch and loved. You and your daughter, Emily, traveled to India and encountered everything from street dogs and cats to fruit bats and rhesus monkeys. What made you decide to capture that trip and its exciting and also very emotional moments on film?
I did start traveling about 9 years ago to Jamaica. And while we were volunteering, and I was volunteering, I went by myself as far as the only vet. I was going to film the adventures because I wanted to pitch a television show, kind of an adventure travel animal rescue show. So for years and years, I kept traveling, filming, pitching to executives, coming so close, them telling me what a great idea it was. My daughter had joined and they're like, okay, that's the icing on the cake. You know, this is going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And then it never did. And honestly, I got sick of people telling me what a great idea it was. You know, why isn't this on TV? This is so amazing. So I decided eventually I'm just going to put my money where my mouth is. And I took a second mortgage out on the house and did this in India. Now, we had been to India before, 3 or 4 years prior. So Emily and I knew, and the producer, Diego, a friend of mine, we knew the crew there, right? We knew the rescue group. We knew the animal rescues were going to be there. And I wanted to show this sort of cultural experience of Diwali as well, the Festival of Lights. So it was just a perfect opportunity, perfect place to go and showcase a great film and the work that the people in India do, and me sort of this fish out of water in this other country. And it blew our socks off. Diego produced and directed it and helped edit it, and he did such an amazing job. And the plan was get it into film festivals. Maybe we'll do well, which we did. Maybe that'll get the attention of the broadcasters. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm super proud of what we did. It's going to be with me forever.
I think everything you just described really comes across in your film, both the excitement and the seriousness of what you're doing, and also the enormous passion the folks on the ground have and you have for really helping the animals. I would encourage people to watch the film. We'll talk about how they can do that later in our conversation. I do want to get to my next question, which is the type of work you actually do. You were diagnosing, anesthetizing, and operating on many different species while you were there. And when you're in the field seeing so many patients in a single day, each with their own unique physiology, how do you quickly shift gears?
It's quick now, but it wasn't in the beginning. You know, you graduate from Ontario Vet College, skilled and licensed, let's say licensed.
Yeah.
And while I did have a real interest in exotic animals, it just didn't work out as far as where my first job was and my second job. And then I bought Wellington Vet Hospital, and it was a companion animal hospital. So you lose those skills. 9 years ago in Jamaica, one of my first surgeries was to remove the eye from an American crocodile. I was like, I don't know how to do this.
You didn't cover that in one of your units in vet school?
I mean, they did, but that was 20 years ago. So, you know, I'm a pretty smart guy, but I don't remember that. But actually, the joke was they said, hey, it's easy taking things out. taking things apart is way easier than putting things together, and just pretend that this is a dog with a skin condition, that he's got scaly skin. And it kind of worked. We just covered up the head of the sedated, not sedated enough because he tried to get us a few times, the sedated crocodile, and did a nerve block in the eye so he didn't feel anything. And then I just pretended it was a dog. But that quickly showed me that I need to up my skills. And that's actually when I started volunteering. When I got back, I started volunteering at Shades of Hope, this wildlife place just north of Toronto. Well, I wasn't seeing any crocodiles. I was seeing birds of prey, tiny little birds, big birds, deer, porcupines. I'd say coyotes, but those are basically funny looking dogs. So that was pretty easy. And reptiles, American bullfrog ones, snakes, the whole bit. I'd only planned to be there for 6 months to kind of relearn what I had already known. I fell in love with it though, and I still volunteer there every single week. Right now, every single Thursday, I go for the entire day. So it's been 7-ish years now that I've been volunteering, what was only supposed to be 6 months. I would look at an animal and say, okay, if this is a cat, this is what I would do. And then the technician or the wildlife rescuer would say, okay, Dr. Cliff, this isn't a cat. You can't give it that antibiotic. It'll kill their gut bacteria or whatever. Okay, you tell me. So that was one of the things is I learned to listen to the wildlife people, the non-veterinarians. And then it slowly became sort of second nature. I'm still more comfortable with cats and dogs, but for me to now fix the broken wing on a bald eagle, as fascinating as it is, and I absolutely love it, it's not as much of a technical challenge anymore. So we learn. I think whatever profession you're in, you probably know a lot more than you think you do. You learn as you go.
And it sounds like it's also a question of flexing that muscle, the memory muscle, so to speak, right?
Yeah, not only the memory muscle, but the creative muscle. Especially because on these trips, I'm going to sort of developing countries that certainly don't have the medical or the surgical tools or techniques available that we have back home. I mean, I'm often doing surgery on animals without x-rays.
Wow.
When I was volunteering up in Iqaluit up in the Arctic Circle, which I seem to do only in January.
Your masochistic side, apparently.
I like to suffer, maybe. I don't know. And all the other vets will come up in the summer. We need a vet who's crazy enough to come up when it's almost dark, 24 hours. I'll go. I think they're missing out. It's quite a beautiful place when it's all ice and snow. Like I was doing surgery, I was removing bladder stones on cats and dogs when we didn't have x-rays to confirm that they had bladder stones. So I had to sort of use my other skills of ruling things in and out and the physical exam and the urine tests and the history to say, I'm pretty sure your cat or dog has bladder stones. We need to go find out. So far, I'm batting 1,000. I've been right all along. You learn to be creative and you do certainly flex those old memory muscles as well.
You just mentioned the Arctic, and you've traveled to many different parts of the world to help animals. You mentioned Jamaica as well, and you've taken your skills to Ukraine, Greece, India, Panama, Poland. How do you decide which countries to volunteer in?
The 2 trips to Ukraine were a little bit different, but most of my trips, people reach out to me and they say, hey, we need you. Can you come? Now, that doesn't mean I necessarily go. I have to go to a place where I'm going to go for 10 days to 14 days. I want to work every day. I don't really want a vacation. And so I'm not going to a dog rescue to help them out as much as they need me if I'm only going to be busy for 2 days and then I'm done. So there needs to be the expansive need. There needs to be a bit of infrastructure. Who am I going to work with? Is there a veterinarian I can work with that can take care of the licensing issues? Is there a group of technicians I can work with, like I do in Iqaluit, that can take care of some of the medicine and I can have assistants? And then frankly, I go to places I haven't been to before, not only geographically, but sort of culturally. I had never been to anywhere like India, so India was a great opportunity. I'd never been to Cairo. I did want to see the pyramids.
Did you?
I did. The pyramids of Giza, they're big and beautiful. We arranged a personal sort of hike from this old Bedouin nomad guy who only spoke French and Arabic, but we had someone on our group that was speaking French. And he took us to these other smaller pyramids where we actually got to go in and see the sarcophagus and touch the walls. And then we rode Arabian horses through the desert into the sunset. Like, it was pretty amazing. Then when I went to Panama, we had never gone south. Let's go to Central America. And I did vacation for 1 day there. I did some surfing. It was the first time surfing in warm water because I surf Lake Ontario here. It's much nicer in warm water than Lake Ontario in January.
It's something about the cold weather that draws you in.
Well, no, I'd much rather surf Lake Ontario when it's warm. We just don't get the waves in the summertime. We don't get the wind that gives us the waves. So, minus 20 with these giant black wetsuits, we all look like sort of giant fat penguins out there trying to get up on the boards with all this neoprene over us.
You were in Ukraine just 6 weeks after the Russian invasion, helping people trying to evacuate their pets to Poland. And then in July, you went back, this time to Kharkiv, to help homeless and injured animals and bring them to the local animal rescue. What pushed you to go, and what was the experience like?
I'm definitely a jump first, test the water second kind of guy, which can get me into trouble. When the war broke out, it was a couple of weeks into it, and there was already conversations about people having trouble leaving Ukraine because they had their pets with them, and Poland, and then the other countries they were going to, Italy, Germany, wherever, understandably didn't want these animals if they weren't vaccinated or if they're sick. Some wonderful organizations, these large scale charity organizations, were putting together groups to go up and work at the border to start vaccinating these animals. But from experience, I know that those large groups take time. There's paperwork that needs to be signed, there's bureaucracy. Whereas I could literally just pick up the phone, get a ticket, and go, which is what I did. I messaged my kids on a Sunday saying, hey, your dad's going to Poland Ukraine border sometime next week, just to let you know. And I was on a plane by Friday or Saturday, so 6 days later. Now, my daughter was backpacking through Europe on her own at the time, vacationing, but also volunteering at animal rescue places on her own. And she messaged me back, well, I'm in Spain, get me a ticket and I'll meet you there. Then she said, don't tell mom. Her mother and I had been divorced for a handful of years, so she's like, don't tell mom, I'll tell her, because she's going to be worried. Understandably. Emily was 19, 20 at the time. When we went, we worked with some rescues, and then we went to the border and basically just helped these people and vaccinated their animals and checked out their animals. But we did do one day into Ukraine. We went into Lviv one day where some bombs had hit. We delivered some medication, not only for animals, but for people. So then I fell in love with the people, and I fell in love with their cause and the need for them to be protected. So that's when I started to reach out. My first trip was late March, and then, as you'd said, in July of that first year, I went on my own this time. I didn't take my daughter for obvious reasons. I went into Kharkiv, which is southeast, right in the war zone. There were bombs landing near us. Animals were coming into the vet clinic that I was working at, where there's no longer a vet. He left the keys with an animal rescue group. They quickly changed from a shelter to a hospital, and I was the lone veterinarian, and basically these soldiers would bring in cats and dogs and bunnies and birds and whatever found in the rubble of these blown out buildings, or sometimes shot, sometimes burned, and I would treat them. We even jumped into a van one day and drove into the war zone, into the Donbass region, to deliver medication, to pick up people, to pick up animals, to bring them out. It got pretty scary, but it was by far the most impactful, personally impactful trip. It's no surprise that it was after Ukraine, when I got back, that is when I decided to invest my own money and go into debt doing this documentary. Because I was like, I could get hit by a bus or a Russian missile one day. I might as well just live my life and chase my dreams. 3 months after that is when we were in India.
I had read somewhere that you have a tattoo inspired by your time there.
I've got a lot of tattoos. They all tell stories, but most of them are from the trips that I've been on. And the tattoo I have on the back of my left arm is the sign of the military, the logo of the military group we were working with. And it is the symbol of Kharkiv, the city, which is basically the medical staff, or the staff of knowledge with snakes that wrap around it, because Kharkiv is known as a city of academics, science and research and technology. In this image, the staff and the snakes are attacking two red falcons underneath. Red signifies war, and the falcons signify Russia. It's a very powerful image. I've been told now that I have this tattoo, I'm never going to be allowed into Russia. I have nothing against the Russian people. Obviously, it's the politics, but it is a very important tattoo of mine and something I'm very proud of.
When you went to Jamaica, you went to the St. Clair Cave, and part of your journey there was through rushing rivers, walking through cockroach feces, ammonia filled air, and 50,000 bats. What was that experience like?
First, getting to the cave was difficult. It was only supposed to take us about a 45-minute hike. It took us close to 2 hours. And it was because we were with this small film crew. We're going through these just disgusting rivers, and we had to wade through them. And we're carrying these giant cameras, which weren't ours. We were renting them. So we had to like set up this line. Everyone would be in the water with this solid footing, and you'd have to hand the camera over. You'd all get out. You'd hike a bit. There was a massive amount of mosquitoes that were almost big enough to carry us off to their den. But it was amazing. We get to this cave and it's like this enormous mouth opening up into the earth. And we had to climb down the roots of, I can't remember the type of tree, but these roots of trees. It was like we were Indiana Jones. And you step into this other world, these giant stalagmites, giant stalactites. And yeah, 50,000 bats, and over thousands of years, they poop a lot. All you're doing is walking on centuries and centuries of bat guano. And I asked the two cave guys, should we be worried about the air, and should we be worried about histoplasmosis?
You'd think.
Yeah, and histoplasmosis is this fungal infection that you can get into your lungs due to bat guano. He basically said, no, you don't really have to worry about histo, but you do have to worry about cave guppies. I'm like, well, what are cave guppies? And he says, cave guppies are cave spirits.
Oh.
Most of them are like lost souls on the island that don't know how to get over to the other side. And the problem with the cave guppies is they have a mean side to them, and they will play with your lights, or they will trip you so you fall, or they'll help you get lost. But all they really want is attention because they're lonely. So he said, if you feel a breeze, and there should be no breeze down there. He says, if you feel a breeze brush against the side of your face, that's your lonely Uncle Andy asking for you to say hello. So I'd recommend you say hello, or else they might trip you up and have you go face first into the bat guano. He said this 100% serious. Like, he was not acting up for the camera. He believed it. And I'll have to admit, when I was down there, I would rather say hello to the wind if I found it and feel silly than maybe suffer the wrath of these cave guppies. So we really went down there, though, to film the plight of the Jamaican greater funnel-eared bat, which is like the size of a mouse, but these giant ears. And out of the 50,000 bats there, only 500 of them. And they only live in this cave in the entire world. So they're highly endangered. And they're being killed off by a fungal infection called white nose syndrome that's affecting bats all across North America and the West Indies and parts of Europe. But they're also getting killed by the cats. And what I learned in Jamaica is cats are an invasive species. And they kill the bats, they kill the loggerhead turtles and the hawksbill sea turtles, and they kill the Jamaican iguanas. So all these endangered species are being killed off by cats that were brought by the English people during colonial times. So they had a different opinion of cats than I did. They were ready to kill cats if they saw them. Thank goodness we didn't have to battle it out. We didn't see any cats that day, but we did see a lot of signs of the cats eating thousands and thousands of bats. So it's a real problem down there.
A spaying and neutering program would be really beneficial.
Was huge in Jamaica, and I learned also in Panama. When I went to Panama, we did 2 different spay-neuter vaccine clinics. The second one was on the island of Bocas del Toro near Costa Rica, also part of Panama. And I was asked to go there by the sea turtle conservation groups. Even the pet dogs are allowed to run free during the day. That's how it is there. They were digging up and killing the turtle eggs. So Raul would say, Dr. Cliff, the dogs are killing my turtles. So please neuter the dogs. And I was like, all right, I'm happy to help you save the turtles by doing what I know best, spaying and neutering animals. There's so many reasons why we need to control the pet population all across the world. And that was always a big thing for me in all of my trips, is spaying and neutering and vaccinating.
I've heard you talk about the important work you do for international rescue and wildlife groups. And when you're working with such groups in environments that have very limited resources, how do you prioritize care and what do you focus on? Is there a triage protocol you follow different from what you might have at home?
The triage protocol is not really that different. I mean, I'll usually be going wherever I'm going with a plan of, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of spays and neuters, and there's probably a handful of cases like other traumas or other illnesses, specific animals that need care. Like one of them is Salim in Egypt. I went to Egypt, went to Cairo, specifically because this dog had been burned. He had had acid poured on his face and he needed advanced surgery, soft tissue surgery. So she said, come and help me with Salim, and also we can do all these spay neuter programs. And then when you're there, stuff happens. They put the word out that this Canadian veterinarian's coming with these skills. He's willing to volunteer his work. So bring us your animals. People bring their animals that have stable but chronic conditions, and then animals get hit by cars, or animals break their legs, or they get injured by somebody else. And unfortunately, people are shooting animals. Every country, even here in Canada. So we triage just like we would triage here. We just look at the necessity. We look at how long can this animal survive in this condition. So that helps us determine what's the most important. But there are situations where I'm in the middle of surgery, even if it's a minor surgery, and an animal comes in severe distress, and I would have to throw instructions at my daughter, who's not formally trained. She's not a vet, she's not a technician. She's just been trained on all these trips, but she's incredibly skilled. So I'd be able to say, okay, I need you to throw in a catheter and bandage that up and give them a shot of pain medication. And then off she would go and do it. Or I would do the same thing with the technicians or the rescuers that are there. I don't want to say I'm their only hope, but the team is often the only option. They don't have these 24/7 veterinary emergency hospitals for people to take their animals to. The need's a little bit more extreme.
Well, I guess that takes me to my next question, which is around some people who may question why you would help animals abroad instead of just focusing on those at home. My response would be that compassion has no borders.
I get a lot more people asking me, well, why don't you help people instead of animals? When I went to Ukraine, the news agencies lost their mind. That 7 days before going to Ukraine the first time, I had so many interviews. On this trip, we put in a GoFundMe page and ended up raising money for these rescues. And we ended up raising $150,000 or something, including $50,000 worth of human chemotherapeutics. So Pharmascience, based out of Montreal, supplied us with a bunch of chemotherapeutics that people need. The Ukrainians get their medicine normally from Russia or China. Well, neither one of them were going to give them medicine anymore when the war hit. I had people on the radio saying, great, you're helping the animals. Why don't you help the people? First of all, I'm not a human doctor. Second of all, I am helping the people because by protecting their animals and vaccinating their animals, they can now go to safety. They can now leave Ukraine and go to Poland. I'm bringing medicine into Ukraine. But then my final answer would be, well, what do you do? Why don't you get off your butt and stop giving me a hard time and do your own charity? And if anyone asks about, well, why don't you help here in Canada? I mean, I do. I spend a full day every single week. 52 days a year I'm volunteering. And most of that is here. Most of that is locally. I think when people ask, their heart's in the right place, but it's just their brain isn't. No one that actually volunteers a lot in any industry ever asks me that question. It's always people that I think they feel bad for themselves because they're not doing anything. So they want to knock you down.
You made some really, really excellent points. Dogs communicate in a variety of ways, one of which is their tails. And apparently, dogs' wags have different meanings.
Yeah, I was on the Mary Berg show talking about this a while ago, and we had such a good time. A dog wagging its tail is not always that they're happy. If they do that giant kind of butt wag where their whole body's swaying, they're happy. They're really happy to see you. But if their tail is kind of out and then up with this tiny little stiff wag, they're actually stimulated. They are aware. They are super alert. And they might actually be kind of getting alert saying, all right, are we going to fight or are we going to play? And sometimes you got to watch out that those dogs are ready to fight. It's like a boxer just slowly raising their hands up. That person's about ready to throw down. You know, if you're at a bar, let's say, and someone's had too many drinks. Now, a dog that wags its tail mostly to the right is actually saying, I like you. And then if they're wagging their tail mostly to the left, they're a little bit more apprehensive. When I learned this, I realized, oh, I think I picked this up without actually knowing it just because, I'm a dog whisperer, sort of. Most veterinarians are. We can tell when a dog is on edge versus happy to see us versus nervous, all these different things just through body language. I just tell people, spend a lot of time with your dog and you'll start to learn their language.
Yeah, I completely agree. As someone who has been blessed to have shared my life with companion animals as well, if you spend any amount of time with them, you will understand what they are trying to tell you.
Yeah. I just came back from a cottage trip with my team. I rented a cottage and is this little team bonding thing. I brought my dogs and they brought a few of their dogs. And we would each ask each other, what is he trying to say? It's like a kid. It's like with a parent and the kid's speaking gibberish and the non-parent is going, what is your kid saying? And the parent knows. So we each know our dogs a little bit better than anyone else.
You've also spoken out about the harm of declawing cats, and apparently people are now also trying to declaw raccoons. Can you explain why this is such a bad idea?
Anyone with common sense would just go, what? This is such a bad idea. So, in the US, about 10 states approximately, it's legal to keep raccoons as pets, which in itself is ridiculous. So, therefore, if they're your pet, you're able to have surgical procedures done as long as they're done by a licensed veterinarian and steps are taken so they're not in pain, that sort of thing during the procedure. Now, any veterinarian who does this should have their own fingernails removed. They basically do it so that the raccoons aren't destructive in the homes. They even remove sometimes their canine teeth. It's like, look, they're destructive in the homes because they shouldn't be in the home. It messes with their behavior, it messes with their psyche. Cats, we've learned that declawing, taking their front claws, no one does the back claws, taking their front claws actually increases the risk of pelvic and spinal arthritis because it changes the way they walk. They put more weight and an unusual weight on their back feet. In cats and raccoons, you're taking some of the bone out as well. It's going to change the gait, it's going to change the mechanics of their walking. It can cause all kinds of problems. People say, well, I love my raccoon and my raccoon loves me and look how they come for treats and whatnot. Well, you've almost tortured them into submission. They don't know any better, but they would have been much happier out in the wild. I'd smack any veterinarian if I heard that they were doing that.
Companion animals, unfortunately, sometimes get into or are even given things that are bad for them. And in one of your Instagram videos, you talked about what to do if your pet ingests marijuana. And I was thinking, like, okay, how often does that happen? But apparently it does. What things are dangerous for pets to eat or drink?
There's a huge list of plants that are dangerous, and sometimes it's the entire plant, sometimes it's just the leaves or the stems or the roots or the seeds. So the easiest thing to do is talk to your veterinarian. I mean, everyone's aware of lilies with cats, that sort of thing, poinsettias. Everyone knows about chocolate, and everyone knows about grapes and raisins, or at least most people know about grapes or raisins. So those are toxic, but so are garlic, onion, leeks.
And just to be clear, we're talking dogs and cats here mostly, right?
Yeah, Tylenol is arguably safe for dogs. The safety range is very narrow. 1 or 2 drops of infant baby Tylenol for cats will cause red blood cell destruction and will become fatal very, very quickly. For any pharmacists listening, I've had pharmacists encourage people, well, your cat has a fever, give it some Tylenol, some baby Tylenol. Because maybe they're thinking aspirin is okay, therefore Tylenol is. Just leave it to the veterinarians. There are so many things that are dangerous. And unfortunately, marijuana is becoming a major problem. The dosaging is pretty extreme. So that's the good news. You can have an animal basically trip out, and with some supportive medication from the veterinarian, they're going to be fine. The joke I have is if your dog swallows marijuana, turn up the Led Zeppelin and hide the potato chips. I said that once to a client because they had called me. This was before it was legal. She was back from university, so it was actually the client's daughter. She called me on my cell phone because I gave it out for emergencies back in the day. And her giant shepherd swallowed a single joint. So I knew it wasn't going to be a problem. And I said to her, okay, this is very serious. Write this down. And she was all serious over the phone. I said, turn up the Led Zeppelin and hide the potato chips. And she was like, what? And I was like, look, your dog's going to be fine. Don't smoke weed. Like everything's going to be okay. The dog was due for an exam the following day for vaccines. And they brought the dog in. The dog was now feeling fine. They brought the dog in for vaccines. And it was now the daughter and the father. He was like, oh, I hear that my daughter called you yesterday. Sheba wasn't feeling well. What do you think happened? And her eyes were bugging out. Please don't tell my dad. Please don't tell my dad. She was begging me. I understand teenage body language almost as much as dogs. And I basically said, look, probably something she ate that she shouldn't have eaten. She'll be okay. And I gave this look to the woman to basically say she shouldn't have eaten that because it shouldn't have been around the house. Now it's legal, so it's less of a big deal. But yeah, there's a lot of things. So everyone, please hide their drugs.
Good idea. Hide your drugs. Do not let your companion animals get into them.
Hide your drugs.
And aside from that very, very important tip, are there any particular first aid skills that you would want people at home to know in case they have to do something prior to taking their animal to emergency veterinary care?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing they should know is how to be safe around their cat or dog when they're injured. Because people get bitten all the time when their animal is very nice but hurt. Using even just a thick jacket or a towel to pick up the animal or to cover their face can save everybody a lot of problems. I think people should know how to make a quick muzzle out of rope or gauze or even a sock. Because things happen when you're out hiking, and the last thing you want is to get bitten and not be able to protect yourself while you're taking care of your animal. You need to know basic first aid. You need to know how to stop bleeding. You need to know how to throw on a bandage. You should know how to pull something out of your dog's mouth, and your dog should be trained well enough that you can pull something poisonous out of their mouth or something dangerous. And that's often not the case. That they'll say, yeah, Buddy is very well behaved. Okay, if Buddy ever were to grab a bone and go to chew on it, could you take it out of his mouth? Oh no, he'll bite me then because he'll be protecting the bone. All right, well, this is a problem because it may have to happen. If your animal has a heart attack due to heart disease, or has a heart attack due to a toxin that you didn't get to the vet fast enough, or has a cardiac arrest due to blood loss, you're probably unfortunately not going to be able to get it back. But if it falls into the lake at the cottage and takes in too much water and stops breathing and heart stops, that's a dog that you can bring back very, very successfully if you know the basics of CPR. So these are things that everybody should know.
And speaking of health care for companion animals, vaccinations are sometimes misunderstood. People may wonder if they really need to vaccinate their pets. Can you explain how vaccines protect animals and why they're vital for public health as well?
We should always ask questions. I encourage my clients and my pet owners to ask me questions. What are these vaccines? Which ones are more important than the others? And there are core vaccines and non-core vaccines. And the non-core, it's depending upon lifestyle. But the core vaccines like rabies or parvovirus for dogs or the upper respiratory viruses for cats, yeah, you need to get your animals vaccinated for that. Parvovirus and distemper in dogs, upper respiratory in cats, we can't catch that. It's not a zoonotic disease. But of course, rabies is. In India, 50,000 people a year die of rabies. They catch it from other animals, usually from dogs, usually from their pet. And most of those people are children. Hey, I got bit. I'm not going to tell my dad. I'm going to get in trouble. But had they had said something, we can cure rabies if caught really, really quickly. Rabies is starting to show up in North America a lot more now too, especially the northern states and in Canada where it wasn't seen that often. We're starting to see it a lot more. So these things need to be done. Now the good news is if you follow certain scheduling, it very quickly, these core vaccines can become 3-year vaccines. So you don't have to do it annually. As long as you follow the schedule properly, it eventually becomes a 3-year. For people who are really worried about over vaccinating, you can take the option, it's much more expensive, but you can do a blood test called a titer to see if your dog has advanced protection. I was vaccinated for rabies back in 1993 when I got into vet school. I get my rabies titer checked regularly. I've never needed a booster. Now, it's very different in people than in dogs, but I've had classmates that are getting boosters every 5 years because that's how their immune system is. I've got super anti-rabies immune system, so I've never had a booster. But of course, I would get one the second I need it. Vaccines are important. It's important to ask questions, and it's okay to ask questions, but follow the recommendations of your veterinarian to protect your animal and in certain cases to protect people as well.
Presumably, one of the concerns is the cost of vaccines. That brings me to the next question. We know that health insurance for people is essential, but what about pet insurance? Should people get health insurance for their companion animals?
I recommend it. I have pet insurance for my own pets. Veterinarians are expensive, even when they give you a family discount like I do. It's like gambling. It's how risk averse you are. Let's think of this horrible situation that your dog gets hit by a car and it's going to be $15,000 to repair multiple fractures, multiple nights in the ICU. We got excellent prognosis. Fluffy's going to be great, but it's going to cost $15,000. Can you afford that $15,000? And unless you are made of money, even if you can afford it, it's going to hurt. Well, then maybe you should do the $60 a month for insurance. That's going to cover 80% of that 15 grand. So I recommend it. I recommend people get it, especially if they have breeds that are more prone to problems. Cats and dogs, French bulldogs, other bulldogs, Shar-Peis, the Shih Tzus and Lhasas have problems, Schnauzers. All of these dogs have health issues at a higher risk. But also get it when your pet is young, when it's cheaper, and get it before they have pre-existing conditions, because then it's also cheaper. And you could get it in the beginning, and then maybe if you're a young pet owner, 10 years down the road, you've got a much better job, you've got better money, you've got money saved up for a rainy day. If you want, then maybe cancel the insurance. But no one does that. When they have it, no one cancels it. It's always they regret not getting it.
A couple of years ago, you ran an experiment to show people how dangerous it is to leave their pets alone in a car during warm weather. Can you share what happened there and what that was like for you?
It was sort of late spring, so it was in June, and it was probably only about 23 degrees, nice breeze, so it wasn't considered extra hot. So 23 Celsius, I'm not sure what that is Fahrenheit. I went in the car, I rolled down the windows a crack, sat there for 30 minutes, and I had a sweater on to kind of mimic like I had a fur coat. Well, I quickly took that sweater off. I couldn't take it. The temperature in the car went above 55 Celsius, which would have been like 140 Fahrenheit. Basically, the thermometer couldn't go any higher. My phone turned off, it got so hot. My heart rate went from a resting heart rate of 60 up to like 150. I knew to sit still. So that was something I kept talking about in the video. I was incredibly uncomfortable, but I knew to sit still and I knew I could get out at any time. Dogs aren't like that. Cats aren't like that. They're jumping around, they're freaking out. They quickly become hyperthermic. They end up seizuring, and even if it does not kill them, it will cause lasting kidney damage and fear of ever going in the car again. It does not take long for it to get uncomfortable, and it doesn't take much longer for it to get dangerous. Even if you only think you're going to be 2 minutes, things happen. Do not leave your animals in the car. Do not leave your children in the car. It's just common sense.
That's even with the window cracked.
Yeah, and not a very hot day. I get it. We're busy. Oh, I forgot. I got to rush into the bank, or I got to grab this, I got to grab that. And then people forget they're loving pet owners, and they say, I would never do this. And then something happens, they start talking to somebody they saw that they didn't think they were going to run into, and all of a sudden, shoot, it's been 30 minutes, and they sometimes go out and see something pretty tragic. And I also tell people, I'm sorry, if you see an animal trapped in a car and it's hot, or you see a child trapped in the car, I'd break the window and let them out. I would rather get in trouble for damaging somebody's $300 window than possibly seeing an animal or a child suffer. And I think most people are like that.
I believe you decided to study veterinary medicine after doing some volunteering work during college, owls and hawks and animals like that. And I heard you say somewhere that you wanted to become a veterinarian. And I think you were kind of joking, but I'm not quite sure because humans are gross and animals are much more exciting. Tell us about that.
I was joking in the sense that I was exaggerating. I am more fascinated by animals. I'm just more attracted to helping pets that are helpless. They really rely on the pet owner and they really rely on the veterinarian, and hopefully they work as a team in making them feel better. And I'm really drawn towards helping, whether it's wild animals or pets, because they're voiceless and they need us to take care of them. And as far as wildlife, so many of those animals are hurt by human interactions. So I kind of feel good about being able to undo some of the trauma that my fellow man or woman does. Let's be honest, it's usually men that are shooting them with BB rifles or hitting them with cars, if that's the truth. I never wanted to be a human doctor. I would be a paramedic. I would love being a paramedic. If you're a family doctor, all you're dealing with is people with high blood pressure or they get the flu and then you refer it off. If you're a surgeon, all you're doing is the same 2 or 3 surgeries over and over and over again. If you're an emergency doctor, that would be exciting, but you don't get to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. I get to do a little bit of everything. I get to see these puppies and kittens essentially from birth all the way to grave, and it's incredibly rewarding. I get to be a part of these animals' lives and then therefore the people's lives. Some clients, I've known them since I first graduated. It's a blessing.
Well, obviously, practicing veterinary medicine is deeply rewarding, but it can also be emotionally exhausting. Beyond preventative care, you also see animals during their greatest needs. You've shared stories about the raccoon who had a wire snare cutting into the flesh of their neck, and the swan who had lead poisoning because they'd ingested buckshot from hunters, the rabbit with BB pellets lodged in their shoulder. And you talked about Salim, the Egyptian street dog who had been burned by acid. When posting about things like that, I've seen you add hashtags like effing stop and similar. How do you manage the emotional toll, and what's your mental reset at the end of a tough day?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I manage it by being honest. My favorite and also the one I hate the most because I have to post it so often is hashtag stop shooting animals, asshole. I get hunting, but the problem is I see bunny rabbits, squirrels, Canadian geese, various birds coming into the wildlife place shot with BB pellets. No one is hunting with BB pellets. That's somebody who's just target shooting. I also refuse to read Google reviews or negative comments.
I think that's smart.
I don't read Google reviews, positive or negative. I just keep doing what I'm doing. A big thing is at the end of the day, I have this habit where I sort of review the cases I've seen for the day. And I realize that all the animals coming into my clinic or that I see at the shelter, they're all leaving in a better way. Now, unfortunately, sometimes we have to euthanize the animal, but I've learned to realize that I am helping them through suffering by passing away with dignity. So that really, really helps. I've also learned recently the phrase being fulfilled is a great shield against burnout. That is something that I practice without even realizing that was the term. I don't feel burnout and I don't feel compassion fatigue because I feel so fulfilled at what I'm able to do. Whether it's a simple cat or dog wellness exam, all the way to dealing with that raccoon with the snare around its neck. Yes, I hate the person who did this. So I'm just going to protect the raccoon and I'm working with these wonderful rescuers. So it sort of raises my opinion of the human species. Surfing's a great meditative sport. The ocean, or in our case, the giant lake, the waves, they don't care about what bad day you've had. You better focus on surfing or else we're going to knock you out or we're going to give you a concussion. So I focus on what I'm doing and it's nice having that escape.
It's good that you have surfing as a stress release.
Yeah, 100%. I love it.
Yeah. You need to deal with so many different variables in veterinary medicine due to the different animals that you help. At the wildlife rehabilitation facility you volunteer at, you performed emergency surgery on a female bald eagle who had a broken humerus. And in the video, you talk about the difficulty of keeping her under anesthesia because the trachea is shorter in birds. And then in your podcast, you also shared the story of helping repair the shin bone of a bullfrog. Anesthesia was the hard part. You called it one of the top 5 strangest anesthesia procedures you'd ever been a part of.
Birds in general are very difficult. They're hard to intubate, so to put that tube down the throat and keep that tube in place because of how short their trachea is. They're also such stressed out animals. They fight the anesthetic, and then when the anesthetic starts to kick in, they can become too deep very quickly, and they can die just from the anesthetic. The surgery part is the easy part when it comes to wild animals. The bullfrog was the most amazing case. So I had never done surgery on a bullfrog. It was an American bullfrog. They come across Canada. They like our healthcare, I think. He had a broken shin bone, broken tib fib. We gave a shot of a sedative painkiller, and then we could not intubate it. We could not get the tube down his throat due to anatomy. So then we held the mask to his face. But bullfrogs can hold their breath for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, right? Especially when they're stressed. So holding the mask against his face wasn't working. So then Kate, who's the head director, sort of medical director, a non-veterinarian at Shades of Hope, she's an Australian woman. So she called her friends at the Frog Hospital in Australia. There is a hospital devoted to just frogs in Australia. And they reminded her that frogs can absorb oxygen and air through their skin. With a recipe that they gave us, we took saline, added isoflurane gas, which normally comes in as a liquid, basically made an anesthetic hot tub. And this frog would lie on his back with his head being held up by my daughter so he didn't drown, and with one leg hanging over this air quotes hot tub, chilling out. And then anytime he seemed to become light and there started to be tension in the muscle, they would sponge bath him some of this anesthetic. So he really was in this spa sort of situation. Me sticking the pin up his heel into the bone to stabilize the bone was easy. It took 3 people and constant monitoring to keep him under anesthetic. In the end, the good news is he did fine.
That's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful story.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
I love the images and videos you show on social media, except for and maybe this is just me, the less than cute things like ear mites. I counted and I saw 7 videos, but there may be more, and a couple of tick videos, which I did not count because at that point I was completely grossed out.
You know, it's funny. Everyone goes, "Ooh, I hate that," but they can't not look. Yes, I want to educate, but I also want to entertain. I got to give the people what they want. And people love ticks and ear mites.
Who are these people?
The abscesses are always the biggest hits. People love them. The one thing I don't show are the maggots.
This is so gross.
Yeah, you're grossing out. When I'm like in any warm country, basically, they got all kinds of creepy, crawly skin conditions. We're very lucky here in Canada and North America.
Yeah, exactly. There was a recent news story about the city of Amsterdam building tiny staircases in canals to save cats from drowning. And I thought this was a brilliant and simple solution to a horrific issue. What are some other simple things you suggest communities and people do to help animals?
I gotta go check out Amsterdam and check those stairs out. That's amazing. There's so much we can do to protect animals, both wildlife and cats and dogs. The first thing is start cleaning up after ourselves. Garbage is so dangerous for wildlife. It gets wrapped around their heads, pieces of string or even hair gets wrapped around the toes of birds. We call it string foot. I have to amputate those toes, and sometimes they can't survive depending on what species of bird or how many toes. So we have to euthanize them. Clean up your barbecue because then the animals interact and they get close to you and all these things happen. Keep your cats inside. Cat lovers don't like me saying this, but cats that go outside in North America are responsible every year for 1 billion birds being killed. They are just assassin predators. And again, technically they're an invasive species. There were no tiny little cats here in North America thousands of years ago. So keep your cats inside. Have your dogs and cats spayed or neutered. Have them vaccinated. Keep your dogs on a leash. Drive slowly. Like, be careful. Brake for turtles. Brake for other animals, obviously. And stop shooting animals. That's a big one.
So it's clear that many people care deeply for their pets, but less so for wildlife or farmed animals. How can we expand our circle of compassion to all creatures, not just the ones we directly share our homes with?
People don't realize how intelligent a lot of farm animals are. Like, pigs are smarter than dogs. And they have more empathy and EQ towards their little piglets than dogs do towards their puppies when they're born. I'm a vegetarian, but it doesn't mean you have to do that. But just stop supporting factory farming. Stop supporting circuses. And I mean, no one goes to Marineland anymore, at least here in Canada, it's illegal. Those sorts of things are not cool. Stop swimming with the dolphins when you go on vacation. Go out onto a boat and just watch them. They're amazing. You know, your Instagram photos are not that interesting. People don't understand where their food is coming from, or they don't understand the importance of wild animals to the ecosystem, and that they deserve the same respect as cats and dogs, for sure.
Where can people find you online to learn more about your work, and where can they see your movie?
If you want to see lots of gross videos, check me out on @drcliff Worldwide Vet, which is Instagram. I don't post on YouTube much anymore, but there's a ton of stuff from the past. If you just Google Dr. Cliff the Vet on YouTube, you'll find me. Now, as far as my movie, if you're in Canada, the TVO YouTube page has it. Or follow me on Instagram and reach out to me and I'll send you a link. I have recently sold a documentary to a broadcaster in the US. Very, very excited. I cannot say who, but stay tuned. Keep your eyes and ears open, and it's going to be coming to a little screen near you in the US as well.
Cliff, thanks so much for having taken the time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.